You're standing in a temple courtyard. The air is thick with smoke, with the smell of iron and burning fat. Priests move in tight lines, blades in hand. The stone floor is slick with blood. And this happens every single day. Not once a year, not on some rare holy day. Every morning, every evening, an animal dies on that altar. The question is why? What kind of God demands this? What kind of debt requires this much blood in a single week? And what happens when someone finally says, enough? To make sense of that moment, you have to go back. Not to the temple. Further, back to the deal that started it all. There's a word in Old Hebrew, chattâ'â. It doesn't mean what you think. We translate it as grammar sin, and that word carries baggage, guilt, shame. A moral stain you scrub off with good deeds. But that's not what chattâ'â meant to the people who coined it. It meant breach, a broken contract, a shattered bond between two parties who had sworn to be bound to each other. You on one side, God on the other, and the contract between you cracked down the middle. Think of it like this. You co-sign a loan with someone you trust deeply. They don't just miss a payment. They burn the bank down. The debt doesn't go away because you feel bad about it. The debt is real. It lives in the terms of the deal itself. And that's what the Old Covenant looked like. Not a vague moral code. A binding pact with real terms and real costs for breaking them. So what do you do when the deal breaks? You don't ignore it. You can't wish it away. The people of ancient Israel were told, clearly, that there was a process, a remedy. And that remedy had a price. Picture the temple in its prime. Not a quiet chapel, not a place for soft prayer. This was a complex the size of several city blocks, run like a factory. Priests trained from birth, shifts around the clock, animals sorted by type and purpose, bulls for one kind of breach, lambs for another, goats for yet another. Each day, the schedule called for specific kills at specific hours. The smoke never stopped rising. The scope of it is hard to picture. During Passover week each spring, families from across the region carried their animals up the hill, waited in line, and watched as the blade fell. The blood ran through channels carved into stone, flowing down and out of the temple walls. This was not a symbol. This was an economy. The largest ritual system the ancient world had ever seen. But here's the part nobody talks about. It didn't work. Not fully. Not for good. The offerings were real. The cost was real. But the breach kept reopening. Year after year, the same rites, the same blood, the same smoke. And still, the contract stayed cracked. The whole system was designed to point at a problem it could never solve. A bandage pressed onto a wound that went bone deep. And the people who paid the closest attention to the scrolls, they knew it. They'd been reading hints for over 1,000 years. Clues scattered across poems, visions, and songs. A pattern forming slowly, like a face coming into focus through fog. One of the oldest texts in the whole collection describes a strange promise. A figure born from a woman who will crush an enemy's head, but get wounded in the process. It's vague, almost coded. But the wound matters. The cost matters. This isn't a story about a clean victory. It's a story about someone who wins by bleeding. Centuries later, a poet writes a song about a man whose hands and feet are pierced. He's mocked, stripped, left to die in public. But the song isn't just grief. It ends with a strange turn. All the nations of the earth will turn and remember. The death isn't the end. It's the hinge. Then comes the most vivid one. A prophet in exile writes about a servant, not a king, not a warrior, a quiet figure who carries the weight of everyone else's breach. Pierced for wrongs he didn't commit, crushed for debts he didn't owe. And through that crushing, the people who broke the contract are made whole. Read those texts in order and you see something take shape. The temple kills all those animals day after day, year after year. But the scrolls keep whispering about a different kind of cost. One death, one figure, one time. Not a lamb on a stone slab, but a person who walks onto the scales by choice. Now step forward in time. A man walks into that same temple courtyard. He's not a priest. He's not from the right family. But he speaks as if the whole building was built as an arrow pointing at him. He heals on days when healing is banned. He forgives debts only God is supposed to forgive. He eats with the people the system labeled unclean. And when the priests push back, he doesn't argue. He tells stories about lost coins, lost sheep, a father who runs to meet a son who burned every bridge behind him. He does something else too. At a Passover meal, while lambs are being readied across the city, he picks up bread and says, "This is my body." He lifts a cup and says, "This is my blood." The New Deal. He's not just eating dinner. He's rewriting the contract. In that room, with 12 confused men around a low table, he declares himself the last sacrifice. Not one more lamb after this. Not one more bull. The debt ends here. What follows is a trial that bends every legal norm of the era. The council that judges him meets at night, which their own rules forbid. They bring witnesses whose stories don't match. The Roman governor finds no crime but hands him over anyway, swayed by a crowd he can't control. And the man who could have called the whole thing off says nothing. He stands still. He lets the weight fall. The death itself is slow. Roman crosses were not designed to kill quickly. They were designed to make you watch. The body hangs, struggling to breathe, for hours, sometimes days. And as he dies, something happens that no one in the crowd can explain. The massive curtain inside the temple, the one that splits the holiest space from everything else, tears. Not from the bottom, where a person might grab it. From the top, straight down, as if unseen hands ripped it apart. That curtain was the boundary, the line between a broken world and the presence of God. Only one priest, once a year, could pass through it. Everyone else stayed outside. And now it hangs in two pieces, swaying, and the room behind it is open. The barrier is gone. But the story doesn't stop at a torn curtain and a dead body. 3 days later, the tomb is empty. Not raided, not moved, empty. The stone rolled aside, the burial cloths folded, and over the next several weeks, the man who died on that cross shows up. In rooms, on roads, by a lake, cooking fish at dawn. He eats with people. He lets them touch the wounds in his hands. He talks and walks and breathes. And the number of people who see him isn't small. Hundreds of witnesses across many places and many moments. Now, the easy way to dismiss this is to call it legend, a story that grew in the telling. But here's where it gets strange. The people who claimed they saw him didn't gain power or comfort from the claim. Almost all of them were hunted. Many were killed. People will die for a belief they hold. But people don't die for a lie they made up. These witnesses had nothing to gain and everything to lose. And they didn't flinch. One of them, a man named Paul, had been hunting these witnesses before he became one. He was the enforcer, the one dragging believers into prison. And then, on a road in the middle of the day, something happened that flipped his entire life. He never said he chose to believe. He said he was faced with it. And from that point on, every letter he wrote circled around one phrase. For us, 2 words that carry the whole weight of his message. The death wasn't an accident. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a trade, a willing stand-in stepping onto the heavy side of the scales so everyone else could rise. The obvious pushback is this: why blood at all? Can't a loving God just forgive? We do it every day. Someone wrongs us. We choose to let it go. No payment needed. Why can't the creator of everything simply waive the debt away? And it's a fair question, but it misses something about the nature of the contract. If you sign a deal and the other party breaks it, you can forgive the person. But the terms of the deal don't vanish. If a judge lets every crime go unpunished, she isn't merciful. She's unjust. The courtroom falls apart. What the cross does in this view is honor both sides. The cost is real, and the one who pays it is the same one who wrote the terms. Justice and mercy don't cancel each other. They meet in the same body, on the same beam of wood, at the same moment. But there's a limit to the legal picture, and this matters. If you shrink the whole thing to a courtroom, you lose something vital. The torn curtain isn't a verdict. It's a door. The rising isn't a receipt. It's an invite. The language Paul uses most often isn't about guilt and payment. It's about union, being joined to someone, sharing a life. The courtroom explains the cost, but the bond explains the point. You don't pay a debt just to settle accounts. You pay it to restore what was broken between two people who belong together. Some scholars argue the whole framework is wrong, that Jesus came to teach and inspire, not to die, that his example is what saves, not his blood. And there's beauty in that view, but it stumbles on a stubborn fact. The earliest records of what his followers believed, written within years of his death, don't center on his teaching. They center on his death and his rising. For our sins, that phrase shows up in the oldest creed we have. Before the Gospels were written, before the churches were built, the death was the message from day one. The nail in a heel bone, found in a tomb outside the old city, still stuck in the bone after 2,000 years. The stone with a Roman governor's name carved into it, pulled from the sand near the coast. These pieces don't prove the meaning of the death, but they confirm the world in which it happened. A world of real nails, real stone, real blood on real altars. This wasn't a story someone dreamed up in a quiet room centuries later. It was forged in dirt and iron and grief. If this story grips you the way it's gripped millions across the centuries, there's more to explore. The next story in this series goes deeper into what happened after the tomb. How 12 frightened people in a locked room built something that outlasted the Roman Empire. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The smoke has stopped rising from that altar. The curtain hangs in two torn halves, and the door behind it stands open, still.